My friends, it has finally come to this. 1984, they often say, was not supposed to be a manual or guide. It was supposed to be a warning. And I know the trope is kind of played out, but here we are. Quite literally, the woke are arguing that 2 plus 2 does equal 5. This is propaganda. It was, we were literally warned about this in 1984. It was on purpose, saying that they're going to try and convince you of things that are not true, arguing they are true. They want to undermine truth so you doubt yourself. It's all about power. Well, I didn't think I'd have to talk about it, but let's talk about it. You see, Matt Taibbi, prominent journalist, liberal, says, I keep seeing references to 2 plus 2 equals 5. Can someone explain this reference? James Lindsay, who has been waging the war against 2 plus 2 equals 5, points out that he was explaining how the woke ideology would understand 2 plus 2 equals 4 to someone. Made a humorous satire card. They tried to problematize me for it, and now they're defending 2 plus 2 equals 5, so I'll be wrong. Take a look at this post from James Lindsay. He made a fake post that says, Woke Minis, 2 plus 2 equals 4, a perspective in white Western mathematics that marginalizes other possible values. And sure enough, people actually started to argue against it.
The University of Illinois math professor believes that algebra and geometry perpetuate white privilege because Greek terms give Caucasians unearned credit for the subject. But that isn't her only complaint. She also believes that evaluations for math proficiency perpetuates discrimination against minority students if they do worse than their white counterparts. She says that on many levels, mathematics itself operates as whiteness. Curricula emphasizing terms like Pythagorean theorem and pi perpetuate a perception that mathematics was largely developed by Greeks and other Europeans. She asks, are we really that smart just because we do mathematics?
Recently, more and more university professors, academics, and opinion influencers are coming out challenging the language of the universe, which is considered to be mathematics. While this seems humorous in nature and it's quite easy to ridicule, it has been done throughout history several times throughout dictatorial regimes. The idea of challenging objectivity. In this video expose, I hope I will do a good job in order to show you what regimes have used this tactic and to give you a better understanding of why intelligent people who manage to become university professors are now pushing for the idea that math is subjective. We usually look towards the future with hope. Maybe that is because our grandfathers lived a better life than our great-grandfathers, and we lived a better life than our parents. So logic would dictate that our children are going to live a better life than we did, and our grandchildren are going to live an even better life. However, that's not always the case. We know that societies can regress. We know that societies can become backwards rather than go forwards. And when I see articles from university professors or from even teachers, which are supposed to be the people that educate the new generations, saying such absurdities.
How do we even start to decolonize science? Because science is true because it is science. And, what can you do? And my response to that was, if I personally were committed to enforcing decolonization, science as a whole is a product of Western modernity, and the whole thing should be scratched off, especially in Africa. So if you want practical solutions to how to decolonize science, we'd have to restart science from, an African perspective, from our perspective of how we've experienced science. For instance, I had a question for all the science people is, there's a place in KZN, and they believe that through the magic, the black magic, you call it black magic, they call it witchcraft, others, that you are able to send a lightning to strike someone. So can you explain that scientifically? Because it is something that happens
I need to address you directly. when we started this, we agreed on certain house rules. Okay. And by you doing that, you're disrespecting the sacredness of the space. And so I'd like to ask you to first please apologize to the panel directly. And then number two, understand the rules that we went by in this space. Because it's going to be very problematic. When we started, this is not an antagonizing space. And so what you're trying to do is collapse the space and make it antagonizing, which we will not allow. This is a progressive space for people to say their opinions. And we have noted how those opinions are going to be laid out. So I would like you to first apologize and then go on and agree to abiding by the rules of the space. Otherwise, I would, if you're not willing to do that, I'd please ask you to remove yourself from the space. But don't.
As funny and tempting as it is to laugh, you need to understand that if you're an American, these are your future politicians. These are your future lawyers. These are your future middle and upper class. And what's really terrifying is that there is no push against this ideology. In fact, most people don't even understand where this ideology comes from. How can an educated person arrive to the conclusion that math is racist and that science is problematic and needs to be deconstructed? Now, I'm just one guy sitting in a dark room in Romania, and I can't do much to push against people from academia in the United States. But what I can do is to pick up a book, read it, and then inform you, the viewer, about the roots of this ideology, to give you the tools so that you can formulate counter-arguments whenever you're on a forum or if you're going to talk with your kids or your friends, so that you can become a person that can counteract this movement. Let us go back to the Age of Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason, which was an intellectual and philosophical movement that dominated the world of ideas in Europe during the 18th century, also known as the century of philosophy. The Enlightenment emerged out of an European intellectual scholarly movement known as the Renaissance humanism, and many consider the work of Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica to be the first major Enlightenment work. The ideas of Enlightenment undermined the authority of the monarchy and the church, and paved the way for a political revolution of the 18th and 19th century. And a variety of movements, including liberalism and neoclassicism, trace their intellectual heritage to the Enlightenment era. However, German philosophers, which wanted to defend the status quo, wanting to defend monarchy and wanting to defend religion, issued a different philosophical movement, the philosophical movement of anti-enlightenment. Leonard Peikoff, in its book The Obvious Parallels, talks about this movement that defines the rejection of enlightenment spirit, and it's called Romanticism. Romanticists believe that reason is a faculty held to a surface world of appearances and incapable of penetrating to true reality. Man, source of knowledge, they declared, is feeling or passion or intuition or faith. Man, in this view, is not a rational being. He is in essence an emotional being, and he must seek the truth and live his life accordingly. Hostile to the cold objectivity of the scientific method, the Romanticists turned to subjective fantasies, priding themselves on the absorption of an inner world of intense feelings, scornful of the shallowness of Aristotelian logic. They flaunted the fact that the universe they constructed was brimming with death, i.e., with contradictions, endlessly blaming into nuance and vice versa. Contemptuous with the world of enlightened thinkers, a world of stable, enduring entities, the Romanticists denied the existence of entities. Their dynamic universe was the resurrection of Heraclitus. Reality is a stream of change without entities or actions or anything that acts, It is a wild, chaotic flux which the orderly Enlightenment mind cannot grasp. So in conclusion, the scientific theory provided mankind with concrete things. The computer you are using, the internet, the fact that you can go now and take a shit in your house rather than go outside in a pivy, are all based on this cold hard truth that the scientific theory managed to give you these goods. We now live better than kings in medieval time because of the scientific theory. However, the scientific theory contradicted both God and the monarchy. And because you cannot use reason and logic in order to dismiss it, the Romanticists said that feelings are more important. Now, what's really interesting is that nowadays universities do not really explain why the Nazis believed what they did. We just know that the Nazis are evil, and that is that. Very little of their ideology is unpacked. And the reason I believe this is that it would draw stunning parallels to the way that progressives view the world, to the way that Hitler and the other people from his inner circle view the world. Let me read you a quote so you can understand it better. "There is no such thing as truth," explains Hitler, "either in the moral or the scientific sense. Goebbels puts the point important is not what is right, but what wins. This causes an unceasing intellectual flux. Pragmatism leads to relativism. An idea the pragmatist holds must be judged to true or false according to its utility in a particular situation. In other words, what works today in one situation needn't work tomorrow in another. Thus, truth is mutable. There are no rigid principles, not in any field. There are no absolutes." In essence, it made no difference to the Nazi leaders whether a man obeyed them for the dogmatist or pragmatic reasons, because of his commitment to the God in heaven or to the Volk on earth. What mattered was that he obeyed. But the Nazis preferred the man to obey for both reasons together, so that it was possible to claim that when the Führer speaks, his statement is a holy truth to be revered, until he contradicts himself, whereupon the new statement is to be revered. Implicit in dogmatism and in pragmatism is a third theory, which is fundamental to the Nazi viewpoint, and that theory is called subjectivism. Racial subjectivism holds that a man's inborn racial constitution determines his mental process, his intellectual outlook, his thought patterns, his feelings, his conclusions, and that these conclusions, however well established, are valid only for members of a given race who share the same underlying constitutional knowledge and truth that the Nazis explain are particularities originating in definitive forms of consciousness and head to the specific essence of their mother consciousness. On this view, each race creates its own truth, and there is no such thing as the truth. In any issue, the truth which corresponds to the facts. There is only truth relative to a group, truth for us versus truth for them. Altruism is the view that the man must place others above the self as the fundamental rule of life, and that his greatest virtue is self-sacrifice on their behalf. Altruism does not mean kindness, benevolence, or the like, of all which are also possible to egoists. The term means otherism. It means the welfare of others must become the ruling purpose of a man's existence. Since men do not agree in their moral feelings, according to Hegel, each group properly legislates its own moral code, to which its own members must be obedient to that code, which is not binding on alien groups. This is the doctrine of social subjectivism applied to ethics. In conclusion, subjectivism is the philosophy which allows the ruling class to gain blind obedience from the masses, and allows the ruling class not to have to explain the decision they have made to the masses, no matter how bad those decisions might end up being. This would also cause the ruling class never to be held responsible whenever they violate their own rules. For example, the Nazis have lectured constantly that communists are evil, but that wouldn't stop them to form a military alliance, a non-aggression pact with the USSR, and after conquering Poland, they would have a joint march parade. The people wouldn't question this because for them it made sense. The question wasn't is it good or wrong, it was useful or not. And when the Nazis attacked the Soviets with Operation Barbarossa, the same question was asked again. The Americans realized that this ideology is dangerous because it attacks the core of enlightened values. As such, many cartoons and propaganda outlets were made in order to combat this ideology. One of the best cartoons is called Reason and Emotion, done by Walt Disney. You can go on YouTube and search for this cartoon. I would highly recommend it to people. And it explains that human beings are neither fully logical creatures and they're neither fully emotional creatures. There is a constant struggle between logic and emotion. Going back to Leonard Peikoff, we need to understand that since Kant has published his work, this way of thinking has dominated the field of philosophy. The deepest roots to this modern shift is twofold. The Romanticist notions of feeling is superior to reason. In ethics, the altruist advocacy of others is superior to self. The result is a view of morality in which the ruling standard is the feelings of others. The Nazis accepted this view wholeheartedly in a racialized version. Morality, they hold, is a product of racial instinct or national character. Morals vary according to peoples, so that national ideas prevail in the domain of morals. Ethical ideas, like all others, are devoid of objectivity. There is no such thing as the truth. In ethics, they say, but only our truth. So why is this way of thinking, this subjectivism, applied to racial groups, so dangerous? The reason is that there are only two fundamental methods in which men can deal with one another: by reason or by force, by intellectual persuasion or physical coercion, by directing arguments to the brain or a bullet. Since Nazis dismiss the first reason out of hand, the only recourse is to embrace the second method. Altruism gives the use of force a moral sanction, making it not only an unavoidable practical recourse, but also a moral virtue, an expression of militant righteousness. Social justice, in this view of the Nazis, says Leonard Peikoff, not only allows but demands the use of force against the individual who refuses to sacrifice himself and his well-being, as well as that of his family, for the greater good of the others.
You know, of course, almost all fascists are under 30, in case you haven't noticed. And it's especially true in the press corps. And they think of themselves as really sort of the cutting edge, I'm radical. And that's why if you think something you're not allowed to think, I'll punch you in the face. Interesting to go down to like the most remote county in Alabama and interview just a cross-section of people at the Hardys, just 25 people, and ask them what they think of the personal sexual practices of the residents of Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and B, how often they think of it. How much of your disk space does this occupy? How many hours a week, estimated, do you spend seething about what they're doing in the sack? 1,500 miles from here. And I'm pretty sure you would find right around 0 people would even understand the question. It just wouldn't compute. Brooklyn, huh? I don't know. Probably something weird, right? Yep, something weird, for sure. All right. That's in New York City, right? Yep, well, there you go. Would you like to pass a law to prevent them from doing that weird stuff? Huh? Who are you anyway? No. And I mean all of them elders at the local Antioch Baptist Church. I mean, evangelicals, 100%. And they would tell you, no. And then, of course, you know the second half. Go to Williamsburg. And that's, what do you think of the people of, Dothan County, Alabama? You know that over 50% of them are against gay marriage? What? I was just thinking about that this morning. We should kill them. They lay awake at night thinking that somewhere in this country there is somebody who's not fully on board with the program. And by on board with the program, I don't just mean is disobeying. I don't mean a county clerk is refusing to sign a marriage certificate. That's a real argument. I get it, no matter what side you're on. No. They mean someone who, in his heart secretly, is traipsing down to the basement after dinner and communicating by shortwave with someone else who disagrees. And that's unacceptable. Not. And I make the opposite, I make an affirmative case against racism like all the time on my show. Or for less race consciousness anyway. It's such a boring subject. It's such a dead end. It can't be fixed. It can't be changed. No, I'm serious. So it's not even that interesting. It's not interesting to me anyway. It's not the America that I grew up in. I'm not being self-righteous about it.